Conscious Creative from MuseWorks Audio. The Conscious Creative is a podcast featuring interviews with artists who are doing transformational work in their craft and in their communities. Join us as we discuss different artistic philosophies, give you brand new tools to bring back to your creative spaces, and build a community of artists dedicated to deepening their relationship with their craft. I'm your host, Mike Irish. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to another episode of The Conscious Creative. Today, we have Brandon Krupa. He is the host of the podcast BC Unsigned, shining a light on the BC hip-hop scene, as well as using his platform to discuss and promote awareness of social issues. Today, we spoke about his podcast, the power and perils of social media, his education and how that informs his consumption of culture and media, as well as his other various projects such as the mixtape he's organizing and the radio show he hosts on Co-op Radio. Before we get into the episode, I want to take a moment to talk about my friends over at Soundfly. They make incredible online music courses that you can either take on your own with a low-cost subscription or one-on-one with a professional mentor, which I've been doing to help grow my Instagram organically. It's been a huge help, and I've had growth already after about a month in, and I'm looking forward to putting the tools I've learned to use so that you'll be able to see the evidence in 3 or 6 months, even a year. You can learn beat making, mixing, songwriting, composing, arranging, synths, home recording, social media, really anything. If you go the mentor route, they'll build a customized learning plan around your personal goals and needs and provide you with in-depth feedback on your work. But if you don't want that hands-on support, the courses are creative and niche enough for you to find your own groove and have fun doing it. Whether you want to learn how to orchestrate for a string ensemble, build a low-end heavy trap beat on Ableton Live, or brush up on your harmonic theory to make more compelling and emotive music, there's definitely a course for you. And the best part is I've partnered with them to get you 15% off your monthly subscription. Just head over to soundfly.com to sign up and enter code CreativePod15 to let them know I sent you, and to start improving on all the musical things you've always wanted to learn. My last message before we get into the show is about MuseWorks Audio. I run MuseWorks Audio, which is a recording and post-production studio in Vernon, BC, but I mostly work online with musicians from all over the world. I really try to honor the creative process in my studio because music has been such a healing force in my life, and I want artists to know that when they work with me, that they're working with someone who really cares, and I want them to feel heard. During the process, I take a lot of care in checking in and informing them, referencing and revising, and making sure that we're constantly working towards what the artist is hearing. It's really important to me that when the process is complete, the artist is excited to share the final product with the world. If that sounds of interest to you, go to www.museworksaudio.com or direct message me on Instagram at museworksaudio to request a quote. Now, without further ado, let's get into the episode with Brandon Krupa. Welcome, Brandon Krupa, to The Conscious Creative. I really appreciate you taking the time to do the show. I know you're crazy busy with like the 8 projects you got on the go. So yeah, thanks for taking the time, man.
Oh, no, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here today. It's something that I'm really interested in, getting to talk to somebody who's got a lot more experience than myself. So it's pretty exciting for me.
Yeah, actually, just is this sort of like the first creative, with your podcast, is that sort of the first creative endeavor that you've undertaken?
Yeah. So that's a good question, because I'm 29 years old, and this actually would definitely be the first time I've put myself out there. Like, I've never had a social media before. I've never had like a Facebook or an Instagram. So this is the first time I put myself out there in that sense. I did play in a band in high school with my co-host of the radio show, Sean. We played in like a blues folk band, but it's been over 10 years since I've done anything like that. And this is the first time this is the era of, social media. So this is the first time I've actually being sort of publicly out there in a creative role. And no, it's a huge change from what I'm used to. So
Yeah, yeah. It's been, I mean, I was doing music before this for for a few years, I should say, not quite a few years, but it's been a pretty big step out of my comfort zone as well, man. Like, yeah, just sitting there and having conversations with people and doing my vlogs as well, just talking to camera has been a bit of a, yeah, a bit of a learning experience, but I've been really enjoying it.
yeah,
Um,
I mean, meeting people is great, but like
yeah,
on that note, I mean, me and my co-host were actually talking about how this is all new to us, like me and you, this sort of podcasting and interviewing and stuff. But if we were to get into the creative scene today for the first time as like 16-year-olds, and we wanted to be like, say, like start a band, like I don't know if we could do it, man, because like me and Sean, I'm speaking for us, because I don't know if we could do it because the amount of pressure is on that's on to be on social media all the time and have this presence. I mean, it's really, really crazy to be jumping in like me and you right now, while it's changed so much since we were kids.
yeah, yeah. I mean, in terms of like possibilities, I feel like there's so much opportunity if you're like young,
Hmm.
just getting into social media and creating music. Like, you're a 16-year-old who is on TikTok and you can reach like millions of people. And that's
Yeah,
a, I mean, it's one of those things, it's a double-edged sword, I think, right? Where like,
absolutely.
um, there's incredible opportunity, but there's also like incredible opportunity for like toxic
Yeah,
culture to seep in as well, right?
yeah. These kids are resilient. I'll say that.
Yeah, yeah. I suppose like talking to a lot of your guests, have you been hearing like a bit about that, would you say?
Yeah, so I'll give one example. Not necessarily somebody giving them a hard time, but somebody was giving me a hard time, and I can't remember what it was about. It was ridiculous. And like I'm not used to this because I don't have social media, and I'm getting all upset. And this 19-year-old kid goes to me, he's like, "Hey man, like you should just ignore it. Don't worry about it, and just let them." He just gives me this most mature answer, right? And it kind of reflects on like the era that they grew up in, I think, compared to what I'm used to dealing with. Like if somebody, because I never really have been on social media, so I'm not used to people personally attacking me for trying to do something I think is good for the community. So I kind of take offense to it. And but I've got these 19-year-olds who are like used to this. They've been doing this for years, and they're like, "Hey man, you just got to let it slide off your back." And I'm like, "Holy shit, man, how old are you?" Like,
Yeah. Yeah, man.
and I'm sure you've seen that too as well in both capacities.
You know what? I haven't got too much, but I mean, I feel like your reach is quite a bit bigger than mine is currently. So like, it's honestly, if you're out there, if you're just getting positive comments back, I feel like that's a sign that you're not reaching out of your like little bubble, because everyone in your bubble is of course going to encourage you because they know you, and there's that reciprocity. But if you're reaching outside of your bubble, then you're going to start getting the hate, so it's almost a good sign, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's something I definitely struggle with when it comes to people posting about the artists that are performing on my page, because I don't really want to have too much negative uh, content, and I don't want people to feel uncomfortable. So I definitely do a little bit of cleaning up the comments section. But I mean I encourage like uh, positive criticisms, but rap music is kind of known for like people kind of not couching things in polite terms, I think.
Totally, totally. Yeah, there's definitely a history with that, but I think it's great that you do a little bit of moderation, to be honest. Like, I definitely plan to, as my platform grows, like, discussion and criticism is awesome, but yeah, just like hateful comments, there's no need for it.
Yeah, yeah, no, and it's something that's new to me too, right? So
Yeah.
it's all kind of a little overwhelming some days, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe we could move on to just talking about your podcast and how it started.
Yeah. So basically what happened was um it's kind of a long story to lead up to it, but I went to school, I got a history degree, and I went back to work the next day with the same job, making minimum wage. So that history degree didn't get me anywhere. So I went and got a law degree. I ended up working a bit in law, and I hated it, so I quit. And I tried to switch careers, but when that happened, COVID hit. So basically, I've been unemployed for like a long time, and it's quite I mean, as if you have like if you're an introverted person and you have like anxiety, it's not that bad to be like at home all the time. Like it really, you're like, you're kind of like in your own little comfort zone. But after a while, you start to feel really down. I mean, it's not interacting with people at all, even in like a minor sense, like even like walking by people because it's COVID, right? So you get really, really kind of you get down. So I wanted to reach out to other people, make some friends, uh, meet people who are like-minded individuals because I don't really have a lot of like I have friends from school, and I don't have a ton of friends that still live in Victoria really. So I wanted to meet people. So I figured I built this studio to record my own music in, but I quickly realized like there's so many people that I could facilitate through this way, through this sort of like um, this podcast, this radio show, because there's a lack of it, I think. So yeah, I thought, there's so many talented people out here, and I'm just bored. I want to meet people, and I think this is the way to do it. And I figured I'd throw the money to charity on top of that, just so I can like feel a little bit better about myself, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, I think it's such a I feel like you're getting so many things done with one aspect, right? Like you're creating a platform for people, you're donating to charity, and you're also getting that socialization that's so important and so lacking right now. And
Yeah.
you've created a pretty cool wave that you have going on right now, and definitely salute you for creating that, man.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it's been I started I think when I got to around 300 followers, I think we're at 1800 now, but when I got to 300, I started to be able to get help from other people. So like I was able to reach out. I was able to get like advice from you, advice from another guy who does podcasts, and then I was able to get advice from people who just do music and production in general. And then I actually got people to join the team and do graphics and do mixing. So like at the heart of this, it was to meet people and collaborate. And then the fact that I'm able to get people on the team and to join with me and to help out, like that's the purpose, right? Is the collaboration and making friends and stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think that something with such a pure purpose from the very beginning, like that's why it's working out so well for you. And that's my opinion and my thoughts, but yeah,
Yeah, that's that. I've heard that a few times. Um, I think maybe people have an easy time getting behind something that they see as not being a selfish endeavor, maybe, because it's the money goes to charity. So I think on like a more cynical note, it's like actually a beneficial marketing tool because I think people are more interested in getting behind something that they see as a good cause, right?
totally. Yeah, totally. So you mentioned that you studied history in university and you ended up working in law. And you kind of mentioned it a little bit, but yeah, what was your experience working in law? I know you said you weren't crazy about it.
Yeah. So basically, I could tell right when I got to law school, like I didn't really fit in. It's a lot of type A personalities, really, really powerful, smart, and resilient folks, I guess I'd say. They're they're the kind of people everybody puts their hand up, everybody has the answer, everybody's prepared. And I was felt like I was struggling to keep up with everybody. Once I got to working, I got a really good job at a great firm. It's called PLLR in Richmond. It's like an amazing law firm, really old, really established, and they're great to their employees. But I knew because if I'm struggling at this firm, like I'm not going to enjoy the legal field at all. And sort of what made me struggle was it's the kind of work similar to, I guess, music and what you're doing. It's the kind of work that you can't leave at work. You're constantly working on a file. So it's say somebody's got to get this property cleared of title so that they can sell it and do development. Well, you're constantly thinking about the problem and constantly thinking about potential solutions because you're always on the clock and there's a deadline. And so there's never really putting the work down. And that's good if it's something that you like. But if it's something that you hate and really stresses you out, you kind of become a not a great person to be around. My wife said she'd be happy for me to quit because I just I wasn't, which is great, right? She works as a nurse, so she can afford to cover me for a while, and she was happy for me to quit and give up that big paycheck just because I was such a miserable person to be around at the time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've just started my business last year, and like I'm definitely pretty obsessed with it, and like trying to figure out these solutions and trying to figure out how to make it work. And um I mean, it drives me crazy sometimes for sure, but it's something that I'm really passionate about. So um so I don't mind so much, but
Exactly.
I can't imagine doing that, like putting that much mental effort towards something that I did not care about.
Yeah, generally it was keeping rich people rich too is the other thing. It generally most of the time, like if you're making money in law, you're generally keeping rich people rich. Like it's trying to find ways out of taxes and trying to find ways to put things into trusts. And it's like generally not stuff you feel good about. It's as somebody who's um, sort of more on the socialist side of the spectrum, I guess.
Yeah. 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 And you studied history as well, right?
hmm Canadian history mostly, yeah.
Canadian history. Oh, that's, yeah, that's really cool because I mean, obviously you have this new initiative that you're working on, but
hmm
before we get into that, which I'm really stoked that you're doing that. I don't know. I love talking to people who've spent time in education about like the social sciences and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And how's your knowledge of history like shaped the way you view the world and shaped the way you view music as well?
Yeah. So honestly, I encourage everybody to take history like at in any capacity or even just go on Wikipedia and learn as much as you can because people will trash it, but it's actually not a bad source. But yeah, so I mean, it actually shaped my worldview completely. Like, first of all, when I go and watch a movie, I understand the historical context of first of all the story in the movie. So say it takes place in like the 80s in the States. Like I know that we've got some like Cold War stuff going on. I know that we've got some war on drugs and all the stuff that happens, or say it's in the 60s in the Middle East or 70s. I've got an idea of the historical context. And then I've also got an idea of when that film was made. Say the film was made in like um say the film was made in like say like yeah like in Britain in the 1980s. Like I can look up, I know who the prime minister was, I know what the atmosphere was at the time and the social atmosphere was. So I've got an idea of what maybe the film was trying to say. So it applies a lot to movies, I think, for sure. And then music in the context of when it was made, say like, a lot of folk music is really relevant for that. Um and even rap music. I mean, the emergence of rap music as a struggle music, as music of the people who are struggling. It's something that you learn more in recent history and sociology for sure. But I think it shapes your life and your perspective so much. Like I can encourage people enough to take history, take social sciences, take whatever.
Yeah, I think that's so cool, man. Um, yeah, because I talk obviously on the show with people um, about their approaches to creativity and how they view creativity, but I don't really talk to people about how they consume media and how they consume art. And it's interesting, but also really obvious now that I think about it, that your depth of knowledge about a time and a place can really inform the way that you listen to music or watch TVs or movies.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of hip hop, I think you really benefit the most from learning about recent history and drug policies in the United States, and the recent history. I mean, a lot of this does come up more in sociology, but there's a lot to know. And even when you watch like um, movies like the one on the NWA that came out a while ago, like there's the Rodney King was in that movie, right? That was a big part of that movie, the sort of the anti-police sentiment. And like, of course, that's something that I would have learned about. I took African American history, so I learned. Oh, and I guess I could go even deeper than that. Like I learned all about how the church is sort of an integral part of African American communities and how that sort of made its way into hip hop. Like I learned all sorts of stuff from some amazing professors. And now I get to, you know, um, meet amazing people who are doing, music, and I get to see the connections between, like what people are talking about and sort of, um, in Canada, we still have talk of police oppression and all that sort of stuff, and I get to interview Indigenous artists, so I get to hear about the history that's in their music as well. So there's definitely a lot to be said in the music. It's generally more recent history though for music for sure.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that, man. And yeah, that goes in very well to our next question. You're doing a series right now about social history through hip hop. And I love that you're using your platform to discuss the deeper aspects of hip hop. And yeah, I just wonder what was there anything that really catalyzed you wanting to do this series?
Yeah, so I figured like I actually started to get a bit of a audience, and I had a platform on the radio there. So
Hmm.
I figured I could start to, indoctrinate people with my social ideals. So so I figured, I'll do history of I did like multilingualism as the first one, and sort of the idea there was to um give people an idea of like, because I saw people saying like racism, Canada is not a racist country historically, Canada is not racist now. I didn't even want to talk about Canada's not racist now. I just wanted to talk about the historical aspect. Be like, look at this. Like we've got some really solid examples of racist policies from the government. So like I used a song from an artist who raps in Mandarin, and then I'd use that as a segue to talk about the Chinese head tax and the use of Chinese workers on the railroad and all that stuff. And I think it's kind of like interesting to people maybe because people like to learn. I think even if they don't know it, but people do like to learn. And I figured that's a fun thing to do. And then I actually ended up moving on to racism today because something came up. I heard something on the CBC. I reached out to the mayor of Duncan, somehow got her on my program, and we touched on anti-Indigenous racism today. So we kind of went, historical racism, racism today. I didn't really get to talk about the contributions that each of these cultures have made, but I think that I kind of talk about it in broad terms, and the music is obviously obviously a contribution. But that's kind of where I want to go with it is to talk more about, learn more about each culture individually, not necessarily just in the context of Canadian immigration, but learn more about each culture. And then I'm also going to be talking mental health and all these other, topics that I think we should, hip hop's a really masculine genre. I think we should definitely try and work on that and try and break down that sort of masculine ideal and maybe make people talk about mental health or talk about drugs, not in the context of just partying, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, oh man, I love that so much. I'm so glad that you're doing that.
Thank you.
What is do you have any of the next sort of episodes planned out or the next topics planned out that you want to share?
Yeah. So I've actually got one with a guy that goes by Ace. He is from Vancouver. He is of Guatemalan descent. He speaks Spanish as well, and he's co-hosting an episode exclusively on Latin American artists in BC, mostly in Vancouver. There's a ton of really talented Latin American artists in Vancouver. I had no idea because when I lived in Vancouver, I was in Kitsilano, and a lot of the immigration happens into Surrey and East Vancouver. So I didn't really come across a lot of this. But when I heard their music, I was like, wow, like these guys are really talented. And there's not just one or two. There's like I can think of like 6 or 7 guys that rap in Spanish in Vancouver, and they're really good. So yeah, so we're gonna talk about. I mean, I'm just gonna have Ace on, and we're just gonna talk about his general experiences as a Latin American artist. So it's gonna be less of a historical one and more of a personal insight. We're also doing
Awesome.
drugs and mental health coming up. Yeah,
Yeah.
we've got some fun ideas. Some stuff that people will want to hear, I think.
Cool, man. I'm really glad that you're doing this with your platform. And I have I know a yeah, I know an artist that I can send your way as well.
Oh, that would be excellent. Oh,
For
and I should also say we're doing I'm not sure how we're gonna do it, but I want to touch on uh disability. I have
yes.
yeah, so I have and invisible disabilities as well. I have
Yeah.
I actually recently linked up with Calvonics, and he's actually really big into talking about disability. He goes onto schools and talks about his experience as a rapper with disability. Um, yeah, so he and I'm so excited to work with him. And TKO from Victoria, he actually had a stutter, and he used hip hop to work on his stutter. There's some really cool stuff that and I actually took disability law in law school, so it's something I'm already kind of
Mm,
have an interest in. So
yeah. I um I know people who struggle with chronic pain pretty severely. And I mean, everyone or a lot of people do to some degree, but it's interesting that that's not something that's talked about very much in culture and in music. Like you don't hear very many songs written about chronic pain or disability for that matter. And it's I feel like it's a topic that should be investigated a little bit more by artists.
yeah, absolutely, especially something like chronic pain. I mean, you could say it's an invisible illness, and it's something that people generally are discriminated for because they're generally seen as opiate seeking, right?
Yeah, and also like my partner is she's training to be a massage therapist, and she had a client in recently who was in pretty severe pain, and and she didn't even know it.
Oh yeah.
And it just made me think about, you could bump into somebody who maybe seems a little bit grumpy or seems a little bit off, and you get the wrong impression of them. And then, but they could be dealing with, 7, 8, 9 level pain.
Yeah. No, and I think that's something that we're trying to address sort of on a broader scale. Like you can, and that's something I was thinking about today as well. I mean, like you can bump into somebody and somebody can maybe say something insulting or whatever, but you got to think like maybe they've been dealing with, you know, somebody's been racist to them today, or maybe they have a mental illness, or maybe they are in pain and they have a disability, or maybe they've been discriminated against, or there's all these things that people go through. And I think that looking into social history and social issues is a good way to make people maybe more understanding of like, hey man, like that guy, he might have really, really terrible anxiety and be on edge right now. Like that's that's something that I'm
Yeah.
pretty guilty of, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. Likewise. Likewise.
yeah.
Yeah. Wow, man. Yeah, I'm so glad that you're doing this and taking this project on. And I know you have, so you have your podcast, you have a show on URP as well, right?
It's all, yeah, on co-op radio. I'm on right before your URP,
Okay,
9
gotcha.
o'clock, 9 o'clock on Tuesdays.
Okay, and you're working on a mixtape as well. What's the story with that?
Yeah, so in order to stay on co-op radio, because it's a nonprofit, we have to fundraise. I guess that's how they tell what shows people like and what shows people don't. So what we're gonna do is, I mean, we've got so much support from the community already. And we could just ask everybody to donate $10, and they've already got enough people who said they would. But I think this is way more fun, way better way to get the community involved. So we've got it's almost like 20 producers. They've contributed beats, and we made this big beat tape on a Google Drive. with a sheet to sign up next to the beat. We've got about 60 artists. Yeah, it's crazy. And you can sign up for a verse or a hook. We've got 60 artists, and they're all going to sign up, and then we're going to kind of get together and make sure that everybody kind of moves along and make sure every slot gets filled that needs to get filled. And we've got Jack Wild, who's a really talented artist out of Vancouver, and he's executive producing one. So he's doing all the beats, and he's actually kind of going to direct the artist. So that is going to be so good. But so the idea is we're going to put it on Spotify, sell physical copies. Hopefully people's families stream it, maybe buy a physical copy for like $5 or $10. And that will give us enough money to stay on the radio for next year. And that kind of sends a message, I think, that like BC actually does have a hip hop scene. It's not just in Toronto. And I think people are jumping on board. Like people like when I made a post, like I get like 20 new people will say, "Hey, can I get on this hip hop tape?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Of course you can," right? Like,
sick, man. I should get on there as well. And
yeah, I saw that. I saw that actually you listed on a track on URP the other day, and I was wondering why I haven't got anything from you yet.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll pass it around as well to some of the people in my circle and see if we can get some more people on. What's your deadline for fundraising?
So end of March is when we're gonna start the cutoff for songs contributed, and then we're gonna work on the marketing and all that stuff. But the fundraising goes right until I believe. Oh, we've got like 8-9 more months for fundraising. We've got a lot of time.
Sick.
So
okay,
yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'll definitely be sharing that around and making sure I support you guys, because that's a pretty cool initiative, man.
Oh, and anybody who wants to send in songs too, I mean, you send them to my email. It's bkrupa05@gmail. You send that to my email, make sure it doesn't have swearing, and I'll play it on the radio.
Sick. Cool. All right, man. Well, I just have one question for you before we wrap up. And I just want to know, this is kind of a question that I ask everybody at the end of the interview, is what impact you want to leave with whatever creative thing that you're doing.
Yeah, that's a good question, because I actually talked to a couple of guys this morning, actually, Evan Atwell and I can't remember the other guy's name, but they do a podcast in Surrey, and they're talking about how the scene is people are doing music as part of an image of being hard, and there's a lot of songs going back and forth about dissing dead homies and kind of stuff that you really see in really not nice towns. And so what I was thinking is like, where is this kind of taking us? And I think what I want this to leave is like, maybe when I go and get a job and maybe I'm not doing this anymore, or maybe I'm just partially involved in 5 years or whatever, but I want to leave a sort of a legacy of a community where people aren't like talking about each other's dead homies and shit. And you know what, if those people are still around, they can just not be part of it, right? You know, like I want to leave a legacy of like people working together, people being able to contact each other, people checking their egos a bit, right? Like I want to have like, and it's already working so well. So I mean, I think we're making strides in that direction. I know that you can't completely change everything, but I think we're doing what we can. So
beautiful, man. Very beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Just before we wrap up, do you want to drop your socials and let people know how they can get in contact with you and follow what you're doing?
Yeah, so we're just on Instagram. It's just Unsigned BC Pod. That's because I made it before we had the radio show. So Unsigned BC Pod on Instagram. You can find us on Apple Music, Spotify, Deezer, all those as Unsigned BC. And if you want to tune in, you can actually hit the link in our bio on Instagram, and you can find the radio link for all of our shows. And I've actually posted last week's radio show on my highlights in the story. So if you want to check out the show that we talked about in this episode, that's in my story highlights.
Dope. Thanks so much, Brandon. I really appreciate the time. And it was really great hearing your story and hearing about what you're doing and what you have planned.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's great to talk, and I can't wait to work on our episode together.
So, again, I want to thank Brandon for his time. It was really a pleasure to sit down with someone who's kind of doing something similar to me and get his thoughts on why he's doing it and how he's doing it. I think that for starters, just his spreading of awareness of social history and social intricacies through his platform, as well as building a community, a supportive community through his platform, is a big takeaway. He kind of has, I'm going to refer to a book called The Go-Giver. He kind of has a go-giver mentality where he's working very hard to just be of service to people. And so many people create platforms, create Instagram pages in hopes that something will happen so that they will get financial gain or social gain. And Brandon really seems to just be doing it out of the love. And I have to say, I have so much admiration for someone who is moving through the world like that. And finally, something that I think is really valuable and maybe we don't talk about enough, how education has shaped his consumption of media and culture and shifted his understanding of what hip-hop was birthed out of and what hip-hop means. I mean, to so many people, especially in this part of the world, hip-hop is nothing more than entertainment. But it's really important to remember that it was birthed out of the struggle of people of color in the States. And I appreciate that Brandon has that level of respect for this art form that I care so much about. I thought that was a really interesting moment in the interview because obviously this podcast is here to discuss the creative process with artists, speak about creativity and the impact that we want to leave. But I thought it was really interesting to talk about the consumption of art and how we look at the world transforms the way that we consume art and consume media and consume culture. So I think it's important that we educate ourselves. If we're really into a particular art form, we should take the time to study what environment it was birthed out of so that we can have deep appreciation for the art that we're consuming and understand the story that's attempting to be told. And I think that is a really good takeaway from the interview with Brandon, and I'm really pleased to have had that drilled home a little bit further in my head, and I hope that it makes sense to you as well. That's it for this week of The Conscious Creative, and I want to say thank you for tuning in, and have a great week. Follow me at Museworks Audio on Instagram if you want to stay up to date with podcast episodes and vlogs and all the content that I'm consistently putting out. Other than that, take care, have a good week, and we'll be back here with another one next Tuesday. Ciao.